Hello and welcome to our second episode of the series Our Lockdown Stories. And in this series of short videos, I am interviewing a selection of our members at Kingston Liberal Synagogue and asking them about their experiences over lockdown and what being a member of our community has meant to them. And I'm super excited this morning because I'm joined by Chistine Locher, who not only is one of our newer members at Kingston Liberal Synagogue, but she is also a brand new member of the Jewish people, because she successfully went to the Beit Din last week and was accepted into the Jewish people. So we are really, really delighted as a community to welcome Chistine, and I'm really delighted to welcome her to this episode of Our Lockdown Stories. Now, Chistine, obviously you had a really positive experience very recently, but I know that lockdown hasn't been such a great experience for you. But first of all, maybe you can start just telling us a little bit about your background and how we got to how you found Kingston Liberal Synagogue, and then we'll talk a little more about the last few months.
Sounds good. So yeah, my name is Chistine Lior Locher. Lior, as of obviously very recently. As you can tell, probably from the first name, I didn't start out being Jewish. Right. I started converting to Judaism when I was working in the US. So I'm a consultant and I have my own coaching business. And that process in the US got at some point interrupted because my visa ran out. And then, I moved to the UK, started a different job and so on. And eventually for a project, I moved to Kingston. And then because I basically live on Twitter, I mean, you know this and other people will know. They don't know already. I actually found KLS on Twitter, so I thought, oh wow, okay, that's great. And then I went, had a lovely chat with Renee and started attending services and classes and so on. And that was probably about 1.5 years ago. Yeah, so I've been sort of around fairly regularly live while it was possible, and then obviously at some point virtually when that became the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And as the person who runs the KLS Twitter account, can I just say how delighted I am to know that somebody was
Yeah, no, it works. It works.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as I said, you haven't had a great experience during lockdown. Do you want to just tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so lockdown was extremely difficult. So I had just moved in February, so none of that was sort of really road tested and foreseeable. But basically when lockdown hit, it sort of turned out that I was living in a completely untenable, slightly dangerous, just really all around horrible situation. And given that we were all locked down, there was also not really any way out of it. And it kept getting worse and worse, and at some point really culminated in me basically escaping with a suitcase and what I could carry, to then come back and sort of get my other things out and so on. So I'm now basically restarting from scratch somewhere else, which was obviously not what I had intended. And also I would not recommend trying to move house during a lockdown. It's horrible at the best of times, and during lockdown it really doesn't work very well.
Right, yeah, I can't even imagine, because as you say, moving house is always one of the most stressful experiences to go through. You're more settled now? I think that's
yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm more settled. I'm sorting things out. I'm enjoying the new place. It's definitely a much better setup, much lovelier place where I've landed, and I'm feeling a lot better. I'm sleeping again at night, which is really great.
So important. Well, we're so happy that you're in a better situation now, because we know that it was difficult. So what during that time, obviously very difficult time, but what has your involvement been with our community during that time? How have you carried on connecting with Kingston Liberal Synagogue?
I think it was actually almost more than I would have done if there hadn't been a lockdown, in a weird way. So I was still kind of going to all the services. The class kept going, which I enjoyed a lot.
That's the exploring Judaism class, is it, Christine?
Exactly.
Who are either seeking to learn more about their own Jewish background or seeking to convert to the Jewish faith.
Yes, and that kept going, and that's always that's just such a lovely community and such a great way of learning and developing and meeting other people on a similar journey. So that was just fabulous. I also found some of the socializing was great whenever I was able to join, just, the coffee mornings and things like that. And it was also a lot easier to tap into sort of the bigger liberal Judaism community because, normally you'd have to actually physically be there to go to something. But now, obviously, with Zoom, it doesn't really matter where you are and you can tune in. And I found that quite inspiring. So there was, for example, a conference around Musa, which I enjoyed a lot. And that was super easy to join, basically, with a click. So a lot of that happened, and a lot of that was really, really interesting. And I got a lot out of that as well.
And what has that involvement meant to you during the lockdown, particularly as you were going through quite a difficult time personally?
It was just really nice that the connections I had made and the things I was interested were able to keep going. Because it's, lockdown the way, and I'm fairly outgoing. So, like normally every evening I would have gone somewhere and done something, and sort of being grounded like a petulant 8-year-old is just really not how I roll. It's just really not me. And to have a lot of the things that are important to me and to be able to keep doing them kind of kept at least a few normal things going. So that was really useful. I loved, because, like at work, people are all sort of a similar background or a similar age bracket and so on. And I am part of different networks and communities, as I think everyone is. But what I love about KLS, it's really kind of all ages and backgrounds. So it's a bit like an ersatz family, and that was really, really lovely. And people were just super nice. People knew that I was having a difficult time, and I got such lovely messages and offers for help and all sorts of things. And that really, really meant a lot.
Wow, that's fantastic. And what I normally ask at this stage is, how has your relationship with your Judaism changed during lockdown? Now, obviously, your relationship with your Judaism is all very new and evolving because you've just recently joined the Jewish people. But do you think lockdown has made any difference in terms of that sort of trajectory? Or do you think you've managed to sort of continue on the path you were on anyway?
I think probably both. So, I obviously did manage to keep on the path I was on anyways. And that was quite important for me because when I was kind of on that journey the first time in the US, and that got interrupted with my visa running out and me having to move, I found that really disruptive. It was, disruptive in many sort of obvious ways, but it was also, I felt like I had just found something and then I lost it. So having the experiencing kind of things keeping going was really, really important. And it's also, you kind of, it's obviously all new, I don't have a lifetime history with all sorts of ups and downs. In a way, it is good to experience things in good times and bad times, because then if it still makes sense. And it really does, and I think that's good. I think it's. Obviously you wouldn't engineer it that way, but given that it's kind of happening, it's really good to see how it really does work in when times are hard, and also when times are good.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do have to say I do miss the food, though.
We all miss the food.
But the food at KLS is quite legendary.
We all miss the food, but the food.
I'm such a terrible cook, so I'm with all these shared things, I think I'm benefiting from everyone else's brilliance in that space, and it's just like I can't wait for that to be back. But there's obviously lots of other good ways of connecting.
Absolutely. And finally, Chistine, Lior, I should be now referring to you as, which is also really exciting. What have you learnt over the last few months?
Ooh, I think really the importance of community. And I find the term social distancing really horrible. I mean, not just the thing itself, but also the way they choose to label it. I think that's just really awful. You know, yes, you have to be 2 meters apart, and you know all sorts of other things depending on the recommendation of the day. But it's really not the social distancing. Like, you know, I think the value of the community is really to hold and to uplift everybody, and you know, whether that's, you know, through a conversation, through feeding someone, through meeting up live, or through all sorts of other things. And you know, I love the immense creativity of, you know, making things happen, you know, like the choir with the distributed singing, and just trying to figure out, okay, this is what we have and how can we make it work. And it does, and I think that's just so lovely. And you know, like the virtual Beit Din I had, you know, you could tell everybody wanted to make it a really thoughtful, meaningful thing, you know, and not just like a meeting with 5 people in it who talk about stuff.
Not just another Zoom call.
Exactly, and it worked, you know, and I think it's, you know, and I think lockdown has probably just made that more clear. It's if people meet, you know, with the right intentions and want to do the right things, it almost doesn't matter, you know, how you're engineering that and what's possible at any given time, but you can definitely make things happen that are good for people, and I think that's great. And you know, that might involve Zoom, and it might involve Twitter, and that's great. So, you know,
and if it has to, it has to. Absolutely, we find a way to make it work. Okay, that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much. And a huge mazel tov, obviously, for your successful Beit Din last week. And as I said at the beginning, we're so excited to have you as a member of our community. We're really, really delighted that you are. So thank you so much for joining us for this series, and stay tuned. There'll be more to come.